We spend so much of our lives trying to fix ourselves. We build routines, track habits, and discipline our days into grids, hoping structure will save us. But what if the real change we're seeking isn't in what we do, but in who we believe we are allowed to be? Every habit begins with an identity. People don't stay consistent because they have perfect systems. They stay consistent because something in them feels safe being that kind of person. If your subconscious still believes you're the one who never follows through, no morning routine will ever hold, because deep down, you'll sabotage anything that contradicts your own self story. We often confuse self improvement with self correction. We think we're refining, but most of the time, we're repairing an image we never agreed to live with. Every goal hides an emotion, the wish to finally feel enough, to finally stop being the person we secretly judge. And that's why habits crack, because we're trying to build new behavior on old shame. Yeah, think about this. When you say, I want to be more disciplined, what are you really saying? That you're tired of disappointing yourself, that you crave the dignity of doing what you say you'll do. Discipline is rarely about calendars, it's about trust. The moment you stop trusting yourself, you start designing external cages to keep you from running away. If this feels familiar, stay with me. Many people chase habits because they can measure them. You can count workouts or track sleep, record meditations, but you can't easily measure self relationship. How gently you talk to yourself when you fail, how deeply you forgive yourself for being human. And yet, that invisible self relationship dictates whether any habit will survive the first storm of emotion. You can't build consistency on self rejection. You can't hate yourself into better routines. What we call lack of motivation is often just emotional resistance. The body saying, I don't feel safe becoming that version of me yet. So, because growth isn't just physical effort, it's identity risk. Every change threatens the old emotional ecosystem that once kept you alive. Notice how you sometimes abandon new beginnings right after they start working. That's not laziness, that's your nervous system remembering an old wound. Maybe as a child, success drew attention you weren't ready for. Maybe every improvement was met with higher expectations instead of love. So part of you learned staying the same keeps me safe. Until that belief is gently rewritten, no amount of productivity hacks will hold. Transformation begins when we stop asking, how do I fix my habits? And start asking, what part of me doesn't feel safe thriving? Because self sabotage is never random, it's self protection, wearing guilt's mask. When you understand that, everything softens. The war inside quiets. People often think growth should feel like force, like pushing through resistance, but real growth feels like permission. It feels like finally allowing yourself to live the story you've always hidden behind effort. The question isn't how to make yourself change, it's how to make change feel safe. We repeat old patterns not because we're weak, but because we are loyal to our pain. We return to familiar suffering because it feels like home. Every new habit threatens to evict the version of you that once survived by doing less, expecting less, being less, and loyalty to that version can feel sacred. But what if healing doesn't mean abandoning them? What if it means teaching them is safe now? That's the real transformation. Not behavioral, but emotional. Not about control, but reunion. You don't need a stricter schedule. You need a safer inner world. So when you wake up tomorrow and feel that quiet resistance, don't fight it. Ask what is protecting. Ask what version of you still believes you don't deserve to feel ease. Because behind every failed habit is an unloved story waiting for you to listen. And once you do, something subtle shifts. You start to act differently. Not because you're forcing it, but because you finally believe the new behavior belongs to you. That's when you realize discipline was never about control, it was always about trust. And trust can only grow where understanding lies. The old you wasn't broken, just scared. And the new you doesn't need to be perfect, just kind. You can change your habits all day long, but until you change the story you tell yourself about who you are, your life will always orbit the same emotional gravity. And maybe that's the truth no one told you about transformation. Is less about doing and more about remembering. Remembering who you were before the world convinced you you weren't enough. Remembering that Every bad habit was once a survival mechanism that kept you safe, and remembering that safety is the soil, not the reward of change. You don't need to fix your habits, you need to fix your relationship with safety, because only when safety returns does freedom begin. But here's where it deepens. Safety isn't just emotional comfort, it's permission to be visible, and visibility can awaken every buried fear you spent years outrunning. You see, the moment you start becoming who you really are, the world mirrors back its discomfort. People who once felt secure around your smaller self start to shift. Some will unconsciously test your new boundaries because your growth reminds them of what they've avoided in themselves. This is the hidden cost of transformation, the social recoil. Every authentic change quietly threatens someone else's illusion of you, and unless you understand that this is normal, you'll keep mistaking other people's discomfort for your own mistake. You'll shrink again, not because you want to, but because you feel the invisible guilt of becoming free. Most people don't talk about that part. They say, be yourself, but they don't mention how lonely it can feel when your old world no longer fits. Because when you truly shift your identity, you also change the frequency of connection. Some relationships dissolve not out of conflict, but out of vibration. And yet, that loneliness isn't a punishment, it's the echo of your own expansion, the silence before new resonance finds you. That's why real transformation feels disorienting. It's not just losing habits, it's losing familiar mirrors. The way people looked at you, anchored who you thought you were without that reflection. You must learn to say yourself directly, maybe for the first time. This is why many relapse into old routines, not because they failed, but because their growth outpaced their belonging. And belonging has always been stronger than willpower. To keep evolving, you must create new emotional homes, new environments where your expansion feels safe. Not perfect spaces, but permission spaces, people, practices, or even moments of solitude that remind you it's okay to keep becoming. This is the unseen dimension of habit change, emotional ecosystems. If your environment still expects your old self, your nervous system will keep dragging you back to match it. So maybe the question isn't, how do I stay consistent? Maybe it's, where do I feel safe enough to stay expanded? Because every time you outgrow your surroundings, you face the test of loyalty to your comfort or to your becoming. And choosing becoming will always feel like loss at first, loss of ease, of approval, of belonging. But underneath that loss lies the beginning of self rust, the quiet knowing that you no longer need to trade your truth for acceptance. You stop performing and start belonging to yourself. The moment that happens, habits stop feeling like discipline and start feeling like expression. You don't force consistency, you embody it. You don't push yourself forward. You stop holding yourself back, because transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering you were never who you pretended to be. And yet, even as you grow into this freedom, a quieter challenge emerges, one you might not expect. When you finally start living as your true self, you'll notice something strange. Peace can feel foreign. After years of chaos, calm can feel like danger. When the nervous system has known survival as normal, stability can feel unbearable. You might find yourself stirring conflict, overthinking, seeking proof that things are still safe, because safety without vigilance feels like vulnerability. This is the last hidden habit to fix, the addiction to tension. It's the final remnant of a life built on protection rather than peace. And until you learn to relax into ease, you'll keep chasing change, even after you've already changed. But that too can heal. It heals the moment you stop searching for transformation as an event and start living it as a relationship, a conversation between who you were, who you are, and who you're becoming. Because maybe the goal isn't to perfect yourself, but to learn how to stay present through your own evolution. And maybe transformation isn't a mountain to climb, but a homecoming you slowly learn to feel safe inside. And somewhere within that stillness, you'll realize you were never fixing your life. You were remembering how to belong to it. There's something sacred that happens after transformation. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first. Not the fireworks of achievement, not the applause of others, but the quiet moment when you realize you no longer need to prove that you've changed. You're not performing calm, you are calm. You're not chasing clarity, you've stopped running from confusion. And in that stillness, something new begins to bloom integration. Integration is the soul's way of asking, can you live gently with the person you've become? Because transformation is thrilling. It's fire and revelation. It's shedding layers and breaking patterns. But integration is learning to live with what the fire revealed. It's the long, tender work of normalizing peace, of making sure the new world inside you doesn't collapse under the weight of old reflexes. Because even healed patterns will whisper to you when you're tired, inviting you back into the comfort of what you outgrew. Integration means hearing those whispers and smiling softly, not shaming them, not fearing relapse, just saying, I understand why you're here. Uh, because every old habit is a language the nervous system once spoke fluently. You can't silence a language overnight. You translate it with compassion. That's the final layer of freedom, not the absence of old thoughts, but the absence of hostility toward them. Many people mistake transformation for escape, a new body, a new city, a new morning routine. But real transformation is about continuity, carrying your new self into the same places where your old self once hid, and letting presence do what running never could. Heal the moment you once avoided. You'll notice a shift when you stop chasing progress and start protecting peace. When you wake up and realize the small, ordinary moments, brushing your teeth, walking home, cooking slowly, and feel different, though nothing externally changed. That's how you know the inner architecture has been rebuilt, because peace can finally exist without reason. But here's the paradox: when you stop needing to fix yourself, you finally become someone capable of real change, because the energy that once went into self criticism now fuels self creation. The willpower that once pushed you through fear now becomes curiosity, exploring life again. Now, this is the essence of integrated growth, where effort becomes artistry, where you stop fighting to become and start expressing what becoming taught you. You'll feel it in your presence. You'll speak slower because you're no longer rushing to be understood. You'll listen deeper because silence no longer threatens you. You'll love wider because you finally met the parts of you that once begged for love. And in that quiet maturity, you begin to sense a strange gratitude, not just for what healed, but for what once hurt, because the pain was the invitation, the cracks were the doorway. Without them, you might never have learned what safety really feels like. Integration is when gratitude replaces control, when you stop needing to manage every emotion and start trusting your capacity to survive them. When I need to change my life softens into I trust myself to live it. And that trust, that calm faith in your own ability to hold life, that's the invisible crown of transformation. No one can see it, but everyone feels it. Your energy shifts from proving to embodying, from chasing value to radiating worth. You stop trying to earn existence. You simply inhabit it. And yet there's one more truth the journey whispers when you're quiet enough to hear. You never really transform. Once you transform in seasons endlessly, each identity you build eventually outgrows its usefulness. Each piece you find eventually invites a deeper one. That's not regression, that's rhythm. The pulse of an expanding soul learning to dance with impermanence. So when the next wave of change comes, when the life you built starts to tremble again, don't panic. It's not collapse, it's evolution in disguise. It's your soul saying, we're ready for a new layer of truth, because transformation isn't a finish line. It's a conversation with infinity. Each breakthrough births the next question. Each piece opens the next threshold. And maybe that's the secret you were meant to find all along. You don't transform to become perfect, you transform to become alive. And if you listen closely, beneath all the effort, all the healing, all the stories you've lived through, you'll feel it, the gentle pulse of something that's always been there, unchanged, untouchable, quietly guiding you. Not the self you built, the self that remembers. And as you breathe into that remembering, you realize there's nothing left to fix, only more of yourself left to meet.